Hey guys, this is Bernie. I'm a mentor for the concept and illustration department here at CG Spectrum. And so we'll be starting a warm-up for figure drawings. Yeah, hold on a second, let me just check something really quick. Hey, what's going on? Do you guys hear a lot of background noise by any chance? Oops. I'm just trying to adjust my audio right now. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's issues with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so I think there's like some noise going on in the background and I could not figure out what it was. It might be my computer, just that fan noise that my mic is picking up. Okay, some of you guys are saying the background noise isn't that bad, so very good, that's a relief. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's a issue with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so I think there's like some noise going on in the background, so I couldn't figure out what it was. It might be my computer, just that fan noise that my mic is picking up. Alright, cool. So again, we are going to start with some warm-up. Okay, some of you guys are saying the background noise isn't that bad, so very good, that's a relief. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's a issue with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so I think there's like some noise going on in the background, so I couldn't figure out what it was. It might be my computer, just that fan noise that my mic is picking up. Alright, so again, we are going to start with some warm-up. Okay, some of you guys are saying the background noise isn't that bad, so very good, that's a relief. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's a issue with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so I think there's like some noise going on in the background, so I couldn't figure out what it was. It might be my computer, just that fan noise that my mic is picking up. Alright, so again, we are going to start with some warm-up. Okay, some of you guys are saying the background noise isn't that bad, so very good, that's a relief. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's a issue with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so I think there's like some noise going on in the background, so I couldn't figure out what it was. It might be my computer, just that fan noise that my mic is picking up. Alright, so again, we are going to start with some warm-up. Okay, some of you guys are saying that that fast, so very good, that's a relief. Hey Jerry, hi, sorry about that. There's an issue with the audio. It's my first time streaming, so sorry guys, is that better? I think I had the stream open. I was checking out the audio and I forgot to turn it off. Is the audio better now? Okay, awesome. Sorry. You guys are so patient and nice to me. Thank you. Okay. All right, awesome. So, okay, we'll continue with this. Yeah, so I'm just trying to feel and go around the figure that I'm looking at right now. So that's about it. The reason why I'm doing these is, again, really to loosen up mentally and physically. A lot of the times we're very concerned about getting things accurate, which is, obviously what we want to do, but when we're warming up, the point isn't necessarily to be accurate, but it's just to get things flowing and position ourselves to be in the right mindset to start creating things and just to loosen up in general. And as you can see, I'm not really spending too much time on these. And I'm not overly concerned about this looking good or anything. Just going with the flow, trying to feel things, loosen up. And I think we'll do one more contour one where you're not looking, but after that we'll start tightening things down a little bit, but still focus on the gesture. Do long strokes. Cool. Have you guys ever done this before where you don't look at the paper and you're drawing just looking at the reference? It can be intimidating until you just let it go. Just let it be, right? All right, so now we are going to do it the normal way. And still, I only want to spend like maybe 2 to 3 minutes on these for now. And I'm still reminding myself, hey, keep it loose. Don't get uptight just because you're looking at it now. Keep it super loose. Reminding myself the point of this exercise, again, is to loosen up. And a lot of this, for me at least, is building up my intuition, like my hand-eye coordination, like reacting to an image I see quickly, so I'm not overthinking it. A lot of the times, I think we overthink things, right? And we don't trust our intuition or our hand-eye coordination, just trusting it, right? And that's, of course, built over time. You got to practice a lot to build that up, but you got to start somewhere, right? So because the time is limited, it's forcing my brain to focus on what's important, right? Hey, what's up, Rushbat? Just doing some life drawings. Warming up right now. Yeah, so that should be it for that one. Let's keep going. Yeah, you're trying to build up reaction speed and again, just trusting your intuition. There's obviously a time where you have to analyze the anatomy and figure to understand really what's going on with the bones, the muscles, and all that, right? And then there's a time for this where you really focus on the flow and the overall feel and building up your intuition, your gut reaction to visuals. Your subconscious is kind of working for you. And I notice that with a lot of artists that draw with their mind a lot, right? They're very technical. Yeah, this is concept art, but focus on life drawing, drawn skull. We'll be drawing today, and then we'll be blocking in some figures as well. Eventually, we're going to take some of the drawings that we do today and create our own characters with it. So you'll see my thinking process behind that. And we'll be painting them up as well. So you'll see digital painting as well. So let's do a few more. Hey, thanks, Brandon. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, so again, trying to focus on the overall gesture, trying to use looser lines, longer lines. And trying to feel through the figure. See how I'm going around the leg? I'm trying to feel around it, not just the contour, but going into the interior as well of the figure. To be honest, it's been a while since I've done this, but it's a great opportunity for me to warm up my skills as well. Sometimes you get so busy working, you don't have time to do studies, or at least I don't make the time to do the studies. But it's always, of course, good to, you get rusty if you don't. And in general, it's just fun. It's kind of relaxing to not worry too much about designs, but just to do figure studies. It's fun. I miss it. In college, we used to do this, hours a day, every day. So it's definitely something I miss doing. Hey, Petriz, PTRIZ 173. Oh yeah, even as a 3D modeler, for sure, a drawing helps, right? You could design your own stuff, even if it's super sketchy like what I'm doing. You don't have to like do a clean line drawing, but just having something sketched out for you as to model off of. That's always a good thing to be able to do. And having some design skills, of course, helps a great deal. Hey, Dronskull, you want tips on how to create your own fantasy worlds? There's a couple books out there that deal with that. Well, I forget the names of them, but search it on Amazon, like fantasy worlds. There's some concept artists that created their own worlds. The one that comes to mind that everyone probably knows is Dinotopia, right? Look up those books. There's several Dinotopia books. Yeah, those are cool to see in terms of how he develops. Gurney develops his world, right, of Dinotopia. He designs like everything, like the text, the vehicles, right? All the artifacts. That stuff is cool. This guy's a bodybuilder here, so he's a bit chunky. Yeah, when I worked at Blizzard, we looked at a lot of bodybuilder references when we designed the orcs. That was fun to do. Just reminds me of that time. Oh, he looks like a midget kind of right here. Let's get that up. How do you spell his name? Gurney? Let me type it in there. I think it's this. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, he has a couple other books. Again, man, my memory sucks with titles and stuff, names and things, but He has several books out there. You should just search it on Amazon. They're very good for artists. I highly recommend his books. All right, cool. This guy's a dancer here, so it's a very nice pose. He's actually on one leg. Quite a challenging pose here. Yeah, that's the one, Brandon. Thanks, Brandon. That's why you're head of department. Yeah, that book is a great book. Yeah, Imaginative Realism in Color and Light. Those are great books. I'm still studying those books. I mean, you could spend years studying that book. Yeah, this torso got messed up a bit, but you know, let's just keep going. Alright, cool. I think that's enough warming up for now. Hopefully, are any of you guys drawing with me right now? Who's drawing with me? Am I the only one drawing? But yeah, let's move on to our main drawings, where we're really going to focus on making them look nice. All right, so I'm using virtual pose right now. Today we're going to focus on this one model here. His name is Pablo. Yeah, it's right there. And we're going to see if we could get through all 4 poses, or 5 actually. And yeah, virtual pose is great. You could obviously rotate it around. It's great to get different angles. So I'm going to use this one here. Yeah, let's go for that one. I'm actually going to try cutting this out and adding it into Photoshop just so you guys can follow along. I think it's kind of might be easier for you guys to follow if the image is in here. And it might get cropped out once in a while, but let's try that out. Hey Laura, awesome. Glad to hear you're drawing. Drawn skull, is it good for character design? Design-wise, I'm not sure, but just lighting and color. So if you're doing character designs, you gotta understand color and lighting anyway. So yeah, I mean, I highly recommend it. Like I said, I think every concept artist I know owns those books. So yeah. What's retopology? I don't even know what that is. Anyways, let's get started on this. Again, there's many different approaches. I think I might show you guys my, 3 different approaches of how to start this drawing, just for fun. yeah, for the first attempt, I'm going to do a super sketchy base. I'm choosing a lighter color, kind of like a light marker, right? And this is when I'm more in the mode of exploring, this is more of the direction I would take, where I'm, again, much more looser in my approach. I'm not trying to be super accurate per se, but again, trying to feel the overall character that I'm drawing. Maybe more the mood is important, and the overall like posture, the pose. And as you can see here, I'm kind of using that tube method where I'm making the upper arm into a cylinder, and then the lower arm another cylinder. I'm sure many of you guys have seen that approach. Maybe I'll do that for this one here. And this is easy when things are in perspective. It's a lot easier to break things down or simplify the figure, right? Instead of you worrying about all the muscles and the nuances and the curves, right? You could just break it down and build it up like this in a more simplified way. I am going to indicate the pit of the neck right there where the clavicle bone's attached to, and I'm going to indicate or mark the center of the torso. The head is looking pretty small here, but I'll fix that later. And I'm putting in the general arcs of the fingers. As you can see, there's an arc going on. It's not just straight blocky like that. You could block it in like that as well, but I'm putting in an arc, just reminding myself that there is an arc to each row of the finger digits, right? And we'll indicate that pull as well, or actually it's a sword, huh? Oops. And sometimes what I do is I do this quite often, is when the proportions are off, I just grab it and just scale it up. I do that quite often. And I try not to fix my drawing too much while I'm drawing it. So once I put it in, I've drawn it overall as a sketch like this loosely, then I'll review it. I'll take a look at it, right? And make fixes at that point. I don't try to fix every single thing as I'm drawing it because, again, for myself, my issue is I get hung up on things sometimes. I'm very naturally detail oriented, so it bothers me like when I see that something's wrong. So I force myself mentally to not worry about it and just to keep moving forward until I get to certain stages in my drawing, right? So again, like after I've kind of sketched it in like that, I'll take a look at it, and at this point is where I would make some adjustments to mainly the proportions. Yeah, so this looks pretty good at this point for me as a sketch. So I'm going to lighten up this image even more, and I'm going to draw on top of it to further refine it. Yeah, so here I'm going to drop in the center point of the head. That's the arc in the lineup of the eyes, right, that I've already placed in. And I'm looking for the eye socket to indicate the eye sockets, the angles in the eye sockets. And looking for sharp angles, like usually, again, it's where the bone structure is, right? That's where the angles will be a bit sharper, not as curvy. Obviously, the curves will be where the muscles are, or the fat. The angles will be where the skin is thinner, or there's not as much muscle mass or fat mass. The bone is coming to the surface, right? Like the cheekbone, the brow ridge right there. Obviously the skull is somewhat angular. Don't draw it like it's not a circle, right? We want to look for those angles and kind of exaggerate sometimes. So when you're shaping something like the skull, it's kind of looking like an alien right now, but yeah, we want to look for those angles and shape that curve or circle or oval with some angles, right? Subtle angles. Again, the cheekbone on this side. And the chin is like way hidden down there somewhere. So yeah, when you get to areas like this, you definitely want to slow down because there's a lot of different overlap going on. And sometimes you do want to zoom in on it. And I understand this head is looking quite huge, this cranial mass. Maybe we want to make him into an alien later on. He's meant to be an alien. But yeah, for now, we'll just shrink it just so it makes more sense. I'll just bring that down a bit. And yeah, sometimes I use a warp tool like this. It's pretty convenient in terms of just changing things up a bit, or the shape of things. All right, so let's keep going. We want to make sure that neck, we make it clear how that neck is going into the torso. The trapezius muscle wrapping around behind the clavicle bone area. So what's important sometimes is creating anchor points like the pit of the neck. That's an anchor point for the clavicle bones, the neck muscles, right? And of course the sternum. So defining those anchor points is what you would do if you're not, to give you direction about where everything else, all the tendons, muscles, and skeleton pieces are connecting to, right? And of course there's the top of that other side of the clavicle here, where the deltoid and the trap will be connecting to. So again, those are just things you could keep in mind as you're drawing the figure. And when we get to joints again, like this elbow joint, we want to use harder angles. And right here where the overlap happens with the knee, you want to slow down and make that accurate, that overlap read clearly. So this knee is actually coming in front of that forearm. So we want to make that clear. We don't want to make it ambiguous. We want to make our overlaps clear. Sometimes, like, we kind of want to BS it, right? And make things, oh, that looks pretty good. But yeah, making things clear is always better. And yeah, when you look at the knee area, who knows what's going on here? That's why this is where you really have to study anatomy, and because just visually looking at it, it's quite confusing, right? So for me, what I do is I try to simplify it. There's the, I think you call it the patella, right? I could kind of see it there. So I'm going to kind of place it in there. I know this is the leg muscle up there. And the bone in the lower legs, there's two bones, right? It's curving. The shin bone would be curving like that. And then there's ligaments attaching to the knee area right here with the muscles, right? And we're getting compression here, so I'm going to bulge that out. And of course the other side of the lower leg will be bulging out a little bit. Maybe that was too much. Yeah, when we get to the ankle, we want to get the angle perspective right. We're looking down out. So the curve is going to, the simplified tube is going to be like this on the bottom, right? We want to get the position of our ankle bones correct, and it's basically wrapping around the foot like that. In terms of design, there's these two ankle joints or bones that are sticking out on each side, and again I make that a hard angle. It's not a curve but a hard angle somewhat. I'm exaggerating the shape to create structure. And we're going to simplify the foot. I'm looking at the major shapes and the major structure. I'm going to emphasize the big toe. Yeah, and the rest of these toes, they're all basically just cylinders. But you can simplify it like that. And when I'm looking at the silhouette, I'm always looking to exaggerate the shapes, the angles that I see. Because if you try to copy something too accurately, like how it exactly looks like, it's actually not going to look like it. It's better to try to exaggerate what you see, if that makes sense. So that when you zoom out on something, or the first impression of it looks more accurately like how someone would view this image over here, right? See all these like overlaps of muscles and the rib cage? I'm exaggerating it compared to what I see here. But by doing this, you see the forms better, right? You see the overlap more clearly, you see the forms, and it just looks more interesting. There's a time to be subtle, but I think most of the times we're overly subtle in the way we describe form. It's much easier to be able to exaggerate the forms and make the forms read very well, and then tone it down later, right, if it's too much. Again, this wrist joint, you want to kind of put an angle to it. And for now, I'm going to keep these fingers pretty loose. My plan is to eventually change up these hands when I turn this into a character or a different creature or something like that. But yeah, you could just simplify it. Again, basically they're tubes, cylinders. And you can also see when I'm drawing, I'm adding accents, like these dark accents, right? In certain places. That's also an indication of shadow, a little bit of shadow, like so if the light's coming from the top, which it usually is, right? There's some more weight to it. By darkening the bottom parts, it adds some more illusion of weight, right? The top parts are lighter, the bottom parts are darker. Same goes here. And when there's compression or two forms touching each other, like right here or here, I put those dark accents because, again, it'll create like some subtle shadowing, right? No cast shadow, but just because of the fact that two forms are touching. And in general, when you're working off of reference, this is my advice, or at least what I do is I don't try to copy the image. Here I am kind of copying it, just because if I don't, I think it might be confusing for you guys. But in general, I don't feel like I ever have to copy an image, right? I just use it as inspiration, or and I always feel, free to change things up. If things are not reading the way I want it to, or the angle is not ideal, then I'll just change it up. And you'll see me do that when I, make it my own. I'll change everything, or not everything, but I will change a lot of it to make it fit what I want. But yeah, I mean, I've seen many artists who, when they're doing studies, they again get hung up on the details. They're like, oh, that angle is not accurate to the photo, it's just a study, right? And what I usually think of when I'm doing studies is, how am I going to apply this to my own concept, right? This whole always thinking of not just making a pretty drawing, right? I'm thinking of how am I going to use this study to enhance and improve my concepts in the future. That's what I'm thinking of. There's a twist going on here in the forearm and the wrist. That looks really cool. So yeah, when you notice things like that, those are things you could carry on into the library in your head, basically, right? And whenever you encounter a situation like this in a concept, you try to remember that. You go, oh, okay, I remember drawing this forearm all twisted up like that when it's holding a staff or a pole or something like that, right? And you try to remember why it looked cool, and you try to bring that into your concept. And of course, doing it multiple times is going to really sear that into your memory. So again, it takes time. I mean, you hear about artists creating a library in their head, right? And that's exactly what it is. The more studies you do, it's just going to get in your brain where you just start remembering things. You remember how to indicate certain textures. You remember what forms look like in general, and you're able to indicate them quickly without spending too much time on them. All right, cool. This is going pretty good so far. And you could tell the negative space is off here, but it's not a big deal. We might make some adjustments later, depending. Let me save this real quick. What do you mean, Michelle? Your fingers are going in and out. What does that mean? Is digital art more common than traditional? I would say it's more common now than it was before. I mean, more people are getting into digital art now than ever. When I first started digital art, so I went to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. They didn't have a digital painting class. So they didn't even have an entertainment design class. So I had to learn it on my own. I remember there was only a handful of guys at the school doing digital painting at the time. And we were basically just learning from each other. But yeah, get a Wacom. I mean, for sure, Wacom tablet's great. It does take some time getting used to drawing on a tablet or a Cintiq. Wow, it looks like time is going super fast. I did want to show you guys a different method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this one as is. We're going to go to a different drawing or a different reference. And there I will try a different method or approach. I mean, it's not a crazy different approach, but still, it might be useful to you guys to see. All right, so let's just group that. I'm just grabbing another image right now. Alright, so the other approach I'm going to do is doing a super loose sketch, and then I'm just going to block it in. So let's start with the medium gray. Oh yeah, that's a good advice, Laura. I'm not familiar with that, but yeah, I know things are changing quickly. There's more options now, so listen to your peers. They know more what's going on than really I do. So here you can see I'm going super loose. And yeah, with concept art, just learning how to be efficient with time is very, very important, because you want to do many variations. You don't want to focus on, you know, just one drawing, because your client or the art director might not like it, right? So what's the point of spending like hours on one image, right? You're trying to do variations. So it's important to learn how to quickly indicate things and finding efficient ways to develop things visually, again, in a way that doesn't take up too much time. That aspect is very important. So again, when I'm doing these studies, I'm always thinking of that, like, how do I get faster at indicating? That's what I'm thinking of. My focus initially isn't on doing a pretty drawing. It never is. So again, every artist is different. Some artists are more accurate from the beginning, and that's fine if that works for you. For me, again, because of my mental blocks, I have to like force myself to just push forward instead of trying to be too perfectionistic, because that will kill me. Like, it will stunt me from moving forward in general or finishing anything, right? So those are important things for you guys to learn as well, to just be aware of how what your tendencies are as an artist, right? what your weaknesses are and learn how to counter them, right? That's something that I talk to my students about quite a bit. And you'll notice sometimes I'll make multiple layers even though I'm on the same drawing layer. And that's, again, whenever I feel insecure or uncertain about trying something new, I think I'm going to mess up my drawing, I'll just automatically make a new layer so it skips that mental block. I'll just move forward. That's what I've learned to do for myself. I just make a new layer instead of worrying about, should I try this? Is this going to look right? Yeah. So sometimes I'll have, like in a painting, I'll have hundreds of layers and I'll have to clean them up later, but you know, that's what works for me. All right, so that's my loose sketch. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to block it in. I'm going to use a larger brush, mid-tone, gray again. Well, actually, I'm going to darken this one so it shows up. Okay. And I'm just going to block it in. I'm just going to block in the whole thing, the whole silhouette, quite roughly, but while I make any adjustments if I have to. And this is what, you know, how I approach concepts as well. I'll do a loose sketch sometimes and block it in real quick just to see the overall proportions and the shape of the silhouette, just to give myself a quick idea of, is this going to work? Is this going in the direction I want it to or not, right? And if it's not, I'll scrap it and do another image, right? And I didn't waste too much time on it. If it is, though, then from here, I'm just going to lighten up that line drawing a bit. I'll make a new layer on top of that. So from here, there's, again, several ways you could do this. I think what I'm going to do is add some accent lines to bring back my structure and anchor points, just so I have a better idea of the overall structure because my drawing is so loose. So I'm going to go in there and look for those angles, the major and medium angles, and reinforce that. Here I'm gonna make that overlap of the hand over the shin area more obvious. And again, just going in there and creating some accents, reshaping some of the larger shapes going on here. And I'm going to make sure there's that curve in the shin bone area. Sometimes, you know, it gets too stiff looking if the curve isn't there. So I tend to always try to exaggerate the curve that's in the lower leg area. If you look at some artists, yeah, they make it too stiff looking. So it's always good to look again for opportunities to exaggerate what you see. Because when you start rendering something, I'm sure you guys notice, things stiffen up automatically, right? Somehow. How does that happen, right? But it always tends to happen where the figure, the gesture that you've done, it stiffens up as you're rendering it. So again, a good rule of thumb is to always exaggerate. Look for opportunities to exaggerate. Basically, I'm kind of redrawing this thing, huh? But to be honest, if this was like, again, a concept that where I'm just exploring, I would go much looser than what I'm doing here. Let me try to loosen up a little bit so I give you guys a more realistic view of what I would be doing. Yeah, I mainly would focus on the larger and medium shapes, not the details at all. There's compression going on here, so I want to do the accents, show the accents off here. Shape is a bit off. Pit of the neck. Compression here in the neck and the trap area. Compression here. So those are things you, also, again, I keep repeating myself, but that's what you're going to hear a lot from me is just repetitive stuff. You want to emphasize where the compression and stretching is happening in the figure. So here, compression, right? Compression, stretch is happening here. This looks all messed up a little bit, but yeah, the stretch is happening here in the back. There's a scapula subtly in there. But yeah, this is the stretch, right? All right, cool. Let's bring a little bit more structure to the head. And then I think we'll be done with that. So in some ways, this process was a lot faster than my first process, right? Of just drawing everything in, right? And so if you're doing an illustration, let me go back to that. When you're doing an illustration and you have a clear reference that's provided for you, it might be fine to just approach it this way because again, the reference is clear. Like the designs that you get are clear. So there's no reason to explore too much in terms of design, right? You're exploring in terms of composition and the pose and expression, things like that, right? But in terms of design, like the little details, right? You're not really exploring too much because you're following reference. So you might just be able to go this route probably. But when you're doing concepts, everything's not figured out for you, right? So you do want to take a more explorative process that's quicker, again. And I personally think this process is much faster than just drawing it out. Because I could use, again, I'm using like broad strokes, a larger brush to fill it all in, and then quickly indicate the forms, right? And then the next step for me at this stage would be to do a lighting pass. And whenever I block things in, I'm kind of thinking of it like clay. So hopefully it'll make sense. To some people this makes sense, to others it doesn't. But I'm thinking of the large and medium shapes again. I'm thinking about 3D forms, right? Like clay. I don't know if you guys ever worked with clay before. I loved working with clay. But yeah, so I'm thinking of like the large and medium forms and describing them, trying to make it look as 3D as possible, right? Once you understand how to describe form, like make it pop as much as possible, then you could always, decrease the amount it's popping out. That's easy to do. But going the other way where you're trying to be too subtle with how you describe form, yeah, that's difficult to go the other way around, starting with subtlety. I would always push and exaggerate the form, then go more subtle if you have to. But being able to describe form is really one of the most important things as an artist, because it's visual communication, right? The viewer has to be able to see what's going on and understand what's going on. And you as the artist has to have the ability to push and pull things the way you want it to be, right? This is kind of like the fun part, for me at least, is when it's coming to life, really come to life, when you add values. And when I'm adding a value here, you can see that I'm really starting very simple. You know how you guys do, the form value studies with a sphere. That's all it is. And then with the cylinder. Right? You guys do all that. That's really what this is all about. The cylinders are the arms, the legs, right? The torso. The sphere is the shoulder, the head. They're all simple shapes when you simplify it as medium and large shapes. Of course, there's the little muscles that complicate things a little bit, like stuff that's going on in the knees, like I said before. But again, that's where really studying anatomy will help you understand what's going on and help you to simplify that, what you see. You don't want to draw every little bump or muscle you see. You actually want to simplify it and group them so that it makes sense to the viewer, because the viewer doesn't know how many muscles there are there either, you know what I mean? But it just has to make sense visually. Hey Jerry, so you said, do you end up keeping the line art and paint over it? Or is it the layer delete later on? It depends, yeah. So if it's too strong, like it kind of is here, I might lower the opacity, sure. Like it really depends. And it depends on your style too, right? Some people, they want their line art to show. So in that case, obviously you wouldn't go this route where you're just quickly like drawing it in there, or you would have to redraw it once it was approved. So for example, let's say you showed this to your art director, and your style is that of one that shows the line work. You would just show this. Once it's approved, you would have to redraw it, right? But yeah, if the style is not one that particularly has to show the line art, then yeah, it's up to you. You could kill the line art a bit, or just get rid of it altogether. It's up to you. And of course, when you're doing when you're going to color, I think at some point, like in the coming weeks, I'll I'll show you guys how I approach direct to color instead of doing black and white like this. A lot of the times, actually, when I'm doing concepts, I'll just go straight to color. It just saves time again. It's a time issue. So I'll show you guys that as well. But for now, if you did black and white, and you want to add color to your layers, you could just do, again, there's so many ways of doing this, but you could add colorize, like check that box. Oops, sorry, I'm on the wrong layer, I think. No, I'm on the right one. So click colorize and just lighten it up. Probably it's too dark, that's why it's not showing. But yeah, you could add color this way to your line work if you don't want it to be black and white. All right, cool. So let's keep going with this. I'm hoping that I could take at least 3 of these images to somewhat of a stage where it's finished as a study. And then I can show you guys next week how to paint over it and make it your own. And again, that is the fun part if you're a concept, or you want to be a concept artist. That's the fun part, where you're like really making things your own, and being creative with like the direction you take things. Like when you look at this image, right, this reference, even as I'm doing the study, always be open to thinking of, oh, what do I see here? When I look at this figure, what does it inspire me to want to, create? Those are the things you always want to be thinking of in your mind. And maybe your first idea is not going to be the best one, right? Usually it isn't, but sometimes, but yeah, in my head, I'm constantly imagining, what can this guy look like? What can I use him for, right? Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. So again, mainly focused on describing those major forms. And the other thing I think of is I'm always thinking of hard edges and soft edges. So you can see right here, this line, I'm going to create a hard edge right around that form of that compression. You see that hard edge? Some hard edges are much more subtle, but here it's quite obvious. And even on the opposite side of that compression right here, that's a hard edge for my lighting as well. You can see that I went right around that form, the hard edge. And I do that so the read of that form is very clear. And then you could soften that other side. Of course, there's no hard edge on the other side of that form, so I'm going to soften it up. And on the edges of this line right here, the edges are softer as well, so I'm going to erase that out as well. So those are things that you can consider as well as you're doing these studies. And there's a shadow here. I'm going to exaggerate that shadow, make it look like kind of a cast shadow over his ankle area. And I'm going to make the bottom portion of his lower leg all shadow. Maybe I'll indicate a little bit of form there, but pretty much I'm just going to keep it all in shadow. Again, you not only want to exaggerate the forms, but you want to exaggerate your lighting as well. Everything you do, you want to exaggerate. And this arm here, this forearm area, I'm going to have a gradient where it's, it looks like it's getting darker as it's going into the background or further back. So I'm just going to keep it like that. again, a hard edge under the chest right there, and then a soft edge as it's coming down the belly right here. Yeah, so a play of hard edges and soft edges really creates nice forms. And yeah, this layer is actually over my drawing layer. So yeah, by doing it this way, you are going to be painting over a lot of your drawing. And we're going to have some light hitting his foot. This will be more of a soft edge here, not a hard one. Kind of diffuse light or hitting his foot right there. And I'll just still keep it loose. Maybe I'll fix that and add in, fill in that silhouette a little bit. Too loose with that here. So let's fix that up, make it look more complete. Add the hand overlap there. See if I have to make any other adjustments at this point. And yeah, the other little thing that I do is, let's say I'm done here and I'll reshape the silhouette by selecting white if the background's white, and I'll cut into it to reshape it. The silhouette is so important, so I'm going to go in there and try to really focus on showing off the shapes again. I know like a lot of you guys have like graphic design backgrounds. This is where you could use it as a strength where you're trying to see things graphically. Because there's so much information, right? When you look at an image like this, a figure especially, you're trying to eliminate that, like kind of blur your eyes or see things graphically first before you look at all those little details. Because that will make things look more iconic. That makes things look more memorable when you do character designs, right? Those things are very important to develop. Your eye, your ability to see these graphic shapes. Because really, like on a subconscious level, that's what people are noticing when they see your character designs. They're not fixated on the details first. The details don't make a great design, right? It's the overall silhouette, the proportions, the shapes that make things memorable. And obviously color as well. But when we're just talking about design, it's those two things, the shapes and the proportions. Save that. Awesome, I'm glad it's helpful. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next image. Let's do one more probably. And then I might, if we have a little bit more time, I might roughly sketch in concept ideas on top of the figures that we just finished, just to give you guys some ideas on how to approach, how you guys could play around with it, right, before next Monday. Maybe you guys could mess around with that on your own. And then we could get together again next Monday to flesh that stuff out. Let's see, which one should we do? So we have, I'm trying to decide between these three poses. Probably not going to do this one. Let's do this one. I already have an idea for that one. When I looked at it, I immediately thought zombie. It looks like he's dragging his like entrails or, you know, his like torn up legs across the ground. So yeah, like certain images, when I look at them, I immediately get inspired and I have an image in mind. Oops. So yeah, let's try this out. I think I'll just put it on top like that. No, I'm not sketching using a mouse. I'm using a Cintiq right now, so I'm using this pen, and I'm drawing directly on the screen. Of course, you can draw on a tablet as well. I don't know many people that draw with a mouse anymore. I had a coworker in the past that did paint with a mouse. He would use the lasso tool. And again, he's thinking graphically, so it worked for him. He used a lasso tool to cut things out graphically and then paint within those shapes. And it's pretty amazing what he could do with that. But I don't recommend it for most people. He just, he's self-taught, so he was able to go about things that way. Oh, okay. I guess pixel artists do that? Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? I didn't think about that. All right, cool. So let's see, which approach should we take with this one? Yeah, this is subtly different, so let's try something a little bit different. You know what? Maybe we'll just go direct to color, because I was just going to draw from the silhouette without drawing anything in line work. I was just going to block in the silhouette, but might as well just mix things up a little bit and add some color. Let's go direct to color. So what I do is I always look for the mid-tone color or the local color, right, for each object. Here obviously is flesh tone. I'm going for what, again, the majority of that color is, the base color. Let's say it's that. We could always adjust it later, so not a big deal. And I tend to make things a little bit darker than it actually is. For myself, it helps me because I can play with a wider value range. All right, so let's take a look. I do start pretty rough, but I am trying to really pay attention to the shapes. Even though it looks like I'm going super rough and loose, I am really trying to focus though. And things are going to be off, I expect that, but hopefully they're off in the sense of just proportions where I can just scale things up and down and not in terms of the shapes. I'm wanting to try to make the shapes as accurate as possible or close as possible. Yeah, see, that scale is completely off for that hand. But again, I know that I can come back later and make that adjustment. Part of it is, to be honest, I'm zoomed out a lot more than I usually work to show the reference. So I feel like I'm being less accurate than I would normally be, making excuses. But yeah, let's cut that hand down. That's like way off. And again, I'm really focused on the shapes and the perspective somewhat. I don't want it to be completely off, because then I just have to make more changes later on, right? Okay, cool. So now we're going to this area. And yeah, his lower body is in perspective, right? As you can see, his upper body is coming towards the camera. His legs are going in perspective. So we're going to pay attention to the angle, right, that we see here. And the proportions. And really try to focus on that silhouette. I know it could be distracting, but you're training your brain to really focus on what you want to focus on at the moment when you do these things. I'm seeing things graphically in my head. And yeah, I'm cutting into areas where it's off. With the white, I'm color selecting the white to cut in. So it's like a good back and forth process. Getting that curve in from the thigh. And let's get those ears in there too. And yeah, when you first do a few of these, like, sure, it's going to be off. I mean, even for myself, when I'm doing this still, you know, maybe if I do 5 of them, one of them will be pretty off, right? And part of the reason is just because when I'm working or doing studies sometimes, I lose focus at times when I'm tired or whatever, right? But that's fine. I mean, the more you do these, the more accurate you're going to become in the less amount of time. And another good practice to do is time yourself when you work on, or when you do studies. You've all heard of, you know, speed paintings, right? And maybe this isn't like a speed painting, but you definitely want to time yourself. For myself, I usually, when I do studies, I try to keep it within an hour to 2 hours. Just so, you know, my brain, or I'm trying to keep my mind sharp. I'm not trying to like doze off or just mindlessly like paint, right? I'm trying to keep myself focused because I have a limited amount of time. And again, it's training your brain to react quickly and to do what you wanted to do, like in a short amount of time. And again, with practice, all that stuff will come together. And it just, again, just a reminder, of course, what we're focused on today is a little different from, you know, studying anatomy. You want to really do that on your own. Look at, you know, just those anatomy figures, muscles, draw the skeleton, front, back, side view, study each bone, right? Study each shape of the muscle, where it attaches. All of that you want to study on your own. That's separate from this. I mean, of course, they're not completely separate, but it's different. What we're focused on today is different. Does that make sense? So when you do all that studying of anatomy and all that, and you combine it with this, that's when everything comes together. Can you suggest one art practice that helped as an illustrator turn into concept artist? Yeah, so really the main difference between a concept artist and an illustrator is that a concept artist has to come with ideas, right? The ideation stage is very important, creating variations. It's just being super creative about designs, right? I mean, as an illustrator, you still have to be creative, of course, and you still have to come up with your own designs to make the original design work well, right? I think any great illustrator is able to do that. But yeah, in terms of one practice, do thumbnails. So for example, this actually goes into thumbnails, because with thumbnails you would be doing silhouettes as well. So for example, if you're doing a zombie design, let's say it's a male zombie with no or that's crawling. Yeah, he has to use his arms. It's not walking. Then I would do like multiple thumbnails like this. I mean, it'd be much rougher than what I did here, but you know, maybe this guy's like clawing his way, dragging it with his claws in front. And maybe this guy doesn't have legs at all, it's just a spinal cord or whatever, right? You can see part of the spine sticking out like that, right? So that's one thumbnail. Next one, maybe this guy has only one arm. So he's like leaning his arm like this at an angle so it could support his upper body. But then his other arm's all torn up, messed up too. So he doesn't have that arm to help him. Maybe his leg is a little sideways and dragging it like that, right? Right? So I would do multiple thumbnails like this, probably like up to 15 to 20 different thumbnails, generating different ideas for one concept, right? That's how you practice developing that ideation stage where, you know, a lot of artists, they're like, oh, I ran out of ideas. Like, after I did 3 thumbnails, I'm done. My brain hurts. I can't think of what else to draw, right? Every zombie looks the same to me, right? So in that case, you really have to force yourself to play. That's what I would say. Be in the mindset of playing, not of getting an answer or, you know, trying to hit the what do you call it? The target, right? You're just playing. That's what you have to get used to. Switch your brain into a mode of playing. Nothing's wrong here. Nothing can be wrong. You're playing. Maybe his legs are like grasshopper legs. It's bent backwards. His whole body's twisted. You know what I mean? See, that looks weird, but you know, why not? Maybe his elbows are backwards, actually. He's like, this is a backstroke for a zombie, you know what I mean? Backstroke crawl for a zombie. He's looking this way, by the way. Or maybe his head's twisted this way. Yeah, that would be weirder. So he's actually looking the other way. Yeah. His neck's broken, right? And he's trying to bite you, coming backwards. So that's the thing, is like even weird stuff like this, you never like limit your brain. This is all brainstorming, right? Never tell yourself this is right or wrong. It's just a thumbnail. Does that help? Tips on foreshortening? Foreshortening for a figure? Yes, I was talking about it earlier, but I didn't go further into it. Let's draw on top of this, actually. The best way, in my opinion, to learn how to foreshorten, and I'm not an expert at this either, to be honest, because when I do concepts generally, we are not foreshortening too much of the character, because we want the 3D artist to be able to see the design, right, of the character or the figure or the creature. We don't want to hide anything. We want to avoid foreshortening, actually. But when it comes to illustrating, that's when a lot of foreshortening will come into play, because you want dynamic, exciting poses, right? And compositions that look interesting. So here, I'm not really going to go crazy with the foreshortening, but I'll show you what I mean. just start with tubes, again, cylinders, simple shapes, because simple shapes are always much easier to put into perspective, right? So the direction of this the curve on the cylinder is this way, right? Because you're gonna be able to see the bottom of that cylinder. So there's slight foreshortening happening there. Same with the legs here. The legs attach into the hip area. You're gonna see the upper part of that hip. The leg, the upper leg. And it's gonna be foreshortened slightly. It's gonna get narrower as it goes into the background, right? Same goes for these legs, simplified into tubes. Again, that was like our first method of approaching the drawing. Here it's the opposite. We're actually going to see the upper part of that cylinder where the shoulder is, opposed to this one where you don't see the upper part. It's hidden away from the viewer, right? These fingers are foreshortened. Again, like I said earlier in the video or the stream, the fingers are just tubes, but you just got to slow it down because there's a lot of tubes going on here. So these fingers are foreshortened, right? They're going at the viewer slightly. So just break it down like that. This hand is foreshortened. Again, be patient and slow it down and draw it the right way. That's what's going to help. I'll be honest, I don't particularly like drawing hands. I myself have to do more studies on it. But yeah, I know that there's plenty of artists out there that try to get away with scribbling the hands in, right? And you don't want to do that. You want to understand the structure of the hand and make it read. Again, all you really have to do is take your time and put in that structure. Same goes for the feet. Understand the basic structure of the foot, and then it will become much easier to describe what's going on. Does that make sense? And there are other books out there. I think Drawing the Marvel Way, I think that's what the book's called. Look it up on Amazon, Drawing the Marvel Way. I think they have methods of how to put figure in perspective in that book. Cool, so let's just keep going with this one. Yeah, so after this point of me just drawing in the blocking in the silhouette, at this point, you could just do a shadow pass, a rough shadow pass. Again, there's so many ways, honestly, of approaching this, but let's go with the shadow pass. I'll put it on a clipping mask. If you guys don't know what that is, you just make so this is my, whoops. That's my layer, right? Sorry. Let's go to my figure layer right there. Make a new layer on top. On a Mac keyboard, it's Alt-Option. I don't quite remember what it was on a PC. Maybe it's Control. But anyways, on a Mac, it's an Alt-Option key. You hover over in between the two layers and click Alt-Option, and that arrow will come up. You just click on it, and then it'll connect it like that. And what that does is now anything you paint on this layer, on layer 24 here, will only paint on whatever is on layer 20. So like that. Oh, but I cut into the silhouette, so that's not going to work. Forget that. But if you did a clean silhouette, it would have worked. I forgot, I messed it up. So it's not a big deal. We'll just paint over it. So I'm going to go for a darker value than my midtone. And now we're going to start painting, blocking stuff in again. I'm going to focus on the approach of blocking things in instead of doing a clean line drawing. And again, I'm thinking of this more like clay. So like if this was clay, I would push my fingers into his eye sockets, right? That sounds kind of weird, but yeah. I'll press that in there so I get that look. And again, I'm thinking of the larger shapes. I want to add some depth to around his, underneath his jawline. Push all that back. I'll push his whole arm back. And here I'm really trying to focus on the lighting and simplify the lighting in my head when I'm looking at the image. And I'm looking at the shapes of the shadow. I'm really trying to focus on the shapes of the shadow. So, for example, the shadowing under his brow for his eye sockets, right? Then I'm looking at this shape. That whole shape, and it's one shape, right? It's all connected, it's all grouped as one. There's of course shadows on his face too, so I'll get to that later, and his head. But I'm looking for groupings of shadows, and I'm looking to focus on the shape of that shadow. So here again I see that shadow shape right here around his rib cage and his belly area. So I'm going to focus on that, starting with the chest. I'm going to click on transfer just to get softer edges. That cast shadow under his arm, hitting his body. And soften up that shadow over there, that edge of the shadow. And I'm going to push the area around his, the hip area behind his arm back a little by darkening it so that arm pops out. And let's push that leg back too. If this was on a clipping mask, it'd be a little bit easier so I don't have to worry about my edges. But since this is still pretty rough in terms of like, polish, it's not a big deal. I'm gonna have to clean it up anyways. And I get to correct some of the things that are a little off here or not accurate as I'm going through this process. I'll push that back, or the butt area a little back more too, so it doesn't compete with the arm area. All right, cool. So that's looking decent so far. Again, it's pretty rough, and again, you can see that by me skipping the drawing stage, in some ways it could be faster to approach things this way, right? Again, it really does depend on the concept or even how you feel that day, right? You might be trying drawings and it might not be working for you. Your drawings might look horrible for whatever reason, and that happens to different artists, right? Then you might try a different approach just to, reset your mind. So that's something you guys could think about. I'm gonna go back to the head and add some shading in here. So you're asking if I could discuss a day in the life of a concept artist? Yeah. I mean, day in the life. It's more like the process of work is you get a task. Sometimes the task or the assignment is clear. For example, if it's like an existing character that they want to further develop, right? Like so, like for example, World of Warcraft. If there's Arthas and they want to redesign Arthas, right? Then it's pretty straightforward what you do, right? You just try different variations for the redesign. It is a different mindset because you're more focused on the design and that you have a limited range of what you can explore. And that's fun too, to have a limit, like a stricter limit on what you can do. It's always challenging that way as well. And sometimes you get assignments where the guidelines are very loose, right? They don't know what they want, and they want you to explore a wide range of variations, right? And that's fun too, because obviously you could do whatever you want almost. And then later on, the client or the director will narrow things down. So when you go into that mode, or when we're at that stage of just exploration, it's all pre-production work. You're in a different mindset. You're really in the mindset of playing, like I said earlier, when you're doing thumbnails like this. You have a very go into a very playful, loose mind where there's no limits, and you're just drawing whatever you want quickly. You're not spending too much time on things, but just generating different ideas. And again, like there are times when you get stuck. You get creative blocks at times. I've seen all artists go through that, and again, for whatever reason, maybe you're just tired. And for me, the things that I do when I have a mental block is sometimes I will just lay down, and of course you can't really do that at work, but at certain workplaces they will actually let you do that, but most of places they won't. But sometimes I'll just lay down and close my eyes, and all these visuals will go through my mind. It's different from like me sitting in front of a computer, because when I'm sitting in front of a computer, I think what happens is I feel like I have to perform, right? I have to generate an idea. I think like subconsciously that's what happens. Like I'm sitting in front of a blank page, right? And I'm like, I have to do something. But when I'm laying down, relaxing, right? That's when like the creative juices flow for me. Like I'm relaxed. I'm not doing anything, right? I close my eyes so I could see things, right? And it's more free flowing. So those are the things that I do sometimes. Sometimes I'll I'll look at books, right? I'll just sit down, relax, and look at different art books or different photography books. Again, I think the point is relaxing, getting yourself to relax, getting yourself off of the task so that you can be in a different mindset, right? Where the creative juices are just kind of flowing on their own without you necessarily having to try so hard. Does that make sense? The other thing is sometimes I'll watch shows, like I'll take a break and I'll watch something, and that sometimes gets me to reset. And I know like a lot of times artists can be hard on themselves, like when you're not able to do something you feel like you should be able to do in terms of visualizing something or just painting something or coming up with cool ideas. You can be hard on yourself. And again, it's I constantly try to remind myself not to be too hard on myself. I always try to be in the mindset of playing, having fun, like exploring, working hard still, yes, but just remembering this is art, right? This is art. We're supposed to have fun doing this. If you're not having fun, I don't know what you're doing. There are times when it's not fun to, let's all be honest, right? There are times when there's a lot of pressure. But again, I always try to remind myself to have fun doing it. And that's honestly when the best ideas come out, is when I'm more relaxed and I'm not putting pressure on myself. You guys, I'm sure, have all been through where you're working, you have a great idea for a piece, right? An art piece. And you think, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be the best idea. This is going to be the best illustration I've ever done. It's going to be the best image for my portfolio, right? And you put all these expectations on yourself, right? And then once you start painting it or drawing it, it turns out horrible. And you wonder why, right? I mean, that happened to me before too, a lot. It's because you're putting pressure on yourself, right? You're putting all this pressure on yourself. And sometimes that doesn't work. I mean, I think most of the times it doesn't work. Meaning you don't do your best work when you're under putting pressure on yourself too much. You know what I mean? Just have fun. Don't get hung up on one piece, like one particular image, right? That's why, like, you see me doing 3 drawings right here. I'm not committed to one, right? That's another way of me dealing with my insecurities, in a sense, right? Getting around it. I'm not committed to one image. Like, if this image fails, I'm cool. I have 2 other images, right? That I could pick from, right? I don't have to, like, say, if this image sucks, oh my God, like, what am I gonna do? This is the only image I got going. Next week I gotta make this work somehow. You know what I mean? But instead I have 3 images that I could pick and choose from. So it's all good. I feel more relaxed personally when I do stuff like that. Yeah. Hey Zane. So yeah, here I'm going to subtly put in like a gradient because the lighting is coming from the top left area. So I'm putting a gradient there because naturally the lighting is going to get darker as it goes down the figure, right? So you can tell I'm not lighting this area up as much. And I do kind of a light, like a focal area where it's bright here and it glows kind of, and then it gets darker, it fades out. So it has a nice like glow or spotlight look to it, right? And I'm creating hard edges here around the shoulder. Behind it, the clavicle area, right? To create clear separation between the shoulder muscle, the deltoid. Always creating clear form separation helps make things read well. And I could do that subtly with the trap here as well. And I'm going to reshape this arm a little bit. So the trap, or not trap, sorry. The, what am I trying to say? What's that? The muscle. The, triceps, that's what I'm trying to say, triceps. Oh my God. Woo! Triceps sticks out a little bit. And I'll reshape this area. It's looking a little fuzzy here. Reshape that silhouette. So yeah, as you build up your image, you're constantly thinking of, you should be thinking of ways to make the visual communication clearer. Whether it's, again, the shape of the silhouette, the overlap between the muscles and the different parts of the figure, like the arm over the torso, reshaping the joint areas to create structure, Those are things that you're always thinking of as you build up the image. You're always trying to improve what you see, improve the visuals, make it clearer. I see that curve in the forearm, so I'm trying to emphasize that. Right here is kind of straight up and down right, which doesn't look nice. So now I'm trying to curve that forearm, kind of like what I was talking about with the lower part of the leg in the other figure, exaggerating the curve, right? You want to always look for areas to exaggerate, curves and things like that, shapes. And this hand needs to get adjusted quite a bit. So I'm paying attention to the angles of those fingers and the thumb. All right, guys, we're almost out of time. If you guys have any last minute questions, please ask in the chat. I'll happy to answer like maybe 1 or 2 more questions. If not, that's all good too. Hopefully you guys are following along with what I'm doing. If not for this stream, during the week, you guys are able to do some studies like this. Let me quickly sketch over the images that I did. To kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about for what I'm going to do next week. So I'm just going to use black, and I'm just going to do line drawings here just to quickly sketch in ideas. But yeah, if I'm thinking, for me, I'm thinking zombie, right? I'm going to open up his his bowels, basically, like how it all ripped open. You see his rib cage all opened up. And this is what I would do in terms of like just if I'm using reference heavily and I want to generate ideas, again, brainstorm ideas, I'll just paint directly on top like this, very loosely. No need to do any detailed drawings, they're just ideas. Don't spend too much time on it. Like, this is for you, this is for yourself, right? But yeah, his intestines are hanging out. And I'm also, when I'm doing this, I'm trying to think of the shapes as well, continuing to think about shapes that I'm making. Again, thinking graphically. Let's see, what else? Maybe his lower jaw's gone, or maybe hanging. But yeah, let's make this into, let's get rid of his nose. This is where, again, knowing your anatomy will help a great deal. So do your studies, always do your anatomical studies. So that you have a general understanding of what things look like, so you don't always have to look at reference. Of course, if you don't know, look at reference, of course. I always look at reference myself if it's something that I'm not used to drawing all the time. But something like this, like a skull, it's something that I've always drawn. So I'm quite familiar with the way it should look. He has a tooth missing. Maybe his jaw is hanging off a little bit. Yeah, we don't have time for me to do like a version for all the 3 that we did, so I'm just going to leave it on this one. Here I'm going to expose some of his bones here, his arms. Maybe someone took a chunk out of his forearm here, so I'll break up that silhouette a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I could keep going with this, but for time's sake, I'll stop. And yeah, you had a few questions. Hey, thanks, Laura. No problem. It's a pleasure. You're asking if someone could hire directly from another country. Sure, it could happen. There's usually visa issues, but it's not impossible. I've seen it happen several times. Yes. So anyways, thanks everyone for joining. I hope you guys had fun. Thanks for being patient with me early on with the audio issues. But yeah, I'll see you guys next Monday. Okay, see ya. Bye.